Hi, my name's Cal Halbert, and this is a basic introduction to the business side of stand-up comedy. Basically, the admin and the boring bits, you know. So, let's have a talk about gig etiquette. It's dead simple. Number one, always turn up on time. If you're asked to turn up for a certain time, turn up at that time. We're not being a pains in the backside. We genuinely need you there. So we know we've got a little bit of leeway with the lineup, okay? If you're booked for a 5 or a 10, do a 5 or 10. You need to stick to your times. It's massively important. Reason being is that there's logistical nightmares within running gigs, within the backgrounds that you don't really know and don't realise until you've been going a little bit of a while. So if you run over by 2 or 3 minutes, that then turns into, by the end of the night, 10-15 minutes overrun because everybody thinks that they can do it. So there's something you can do called asking for a light. Dead simple. All you need to do is ask whoever's running the gig or the compere for a light. And what that is they will usually flash a light from either a torch or their mobile phone. Let's face it, it's always going to be a mobile phone these days, at a certain time where you need to come off if you don't have a watch. Be like me, use a watch and you'll be able to keep a track of all your times. Now, my watch vibrates when I want it off, so if I'm doing a 10, a 15, a 20, whatever it is, I usually have it set for a minute before I need to come off, so I know I've got a minute to wrap up and get off. That's absolutely fine. But if you're in one of these situations where your watch has died or you don't really know how long you're going to do, how long you're going to have, so ask for a light when you need to come off. So, and when you get to your 9-minute mark or whatever time that you've decided that you want your light or the promoter has decided they want you off, they will flash a light at you, and it's at that moment from the back of the room you'll be able to see that you need to start wrapping up and get off. So it's really important that you stick to your time. No matter where you are on the bill, it's massively important that you help promote gigs as well through your social medias. I'm not saying you're going to have to go drive to Leicester or Sheffield to hand flyers out, but being able to share a social media post takes absolutely no time at all. It's a quick share saying I'm doing this. Anybody in Sheffield, anybody in Heaton, wherever you are, it really takes no effort to be able to share a gig or a post or to say that you're going to do it, and promoters really appreciate it. And what that will do in the long term is put you in good stead for future bookings as well. The second thing is there's no shame in asking people for feedback on your set, to watch your set. If there's another comic who's been going a little bit longer, the compere, the promoter themselves, or in fact one of your peers that you respect, there's no shame in asking for them to watch your set and ask for feedback as well. And actually someone that you've gigged with quite a lot, who has seen your set, is actually more useful than someone who's been going a lot longer as well, because this could be the first time they've seen it, okay? So if you've got somebody that's seen your set quite a lot and they say, can you write, make some changes, can you make some notes and give me a little bit of feedback afterwards, that's massively useful to you as a comic. So, the big question on everyone's lips is, how do I get gigs? Now, the easy, simple one is ask for them. That's how simple and easy it is, really. Now, the best places that you're going to get your gigs are being found on Facebook, unfortunately. I'm sorry that you're going to have to go into the cesspit of social media, but that is where the majority of work is advertised on the comedy forums, and promoters will put things on saying, can you message me here? That could be whether that's an email, whether it's a comment just on the post, or a mobile phone number that you'd have to call at a certain time. And these are things that you should really stick to. If they do say email me, don't send them a direct message, because they will not pay attention to you. I've had it myself. I won't respond to you. I will only respond. If I ask you for an email, I need you to send me an email. There's a reason for that, because I don't want to be littered and bombarded with loads of messages from anybody. When you message said promoters, it's dead important that you're really honest and really sensible about what spot you're going for. Let's face it, not all of us want to be able to drive down to London for a £30 open spot, but ultimately, if that's where you're at, that's where you're at, okay? You need to be honest about and realistic about the spots that you're going for. Don't go for the headline spot that's looking for TV credits if you've only done 30 gigs. Let's face facts, you're not going to get it, okay? And also, you're going to have a black mark against your name from the promoter, because they're going to look at you and think, this guy's just a chancer. When you're starting out, it's even more important, and the people are more credible if you get recommended for a gig. So when you're at these gigs, at these different open mic nights, if you're doing open spots for other promoters, network as much as you can with other comics and with the promoters themselves, because we're all friends in comedy. For the majority of us, we're all really nice people. So by networking and recommendation is the #1 way that you're going to get the better gigs and the more paid gigs and the more respect through gigs. So, what do I include in my email to a promoter? Well, it's dead simple, your comedy CV. But what do you go into your comedy CV? Don't worry, it's not like a job one. It's not like that. You don't have to say what school you went to or your address or anything like that. But however, it is quite useful to say where you be driving from or where you be coming from. That is very important. Let them know that you are coming from Newcastle or wherever, because that could influence a booking where they've got a different headliner, and they'll also be able to work together in terms of lifts. So within your CV, what you need is information about the different spots that you've been doing and different promoters that you've been working with. If you've had any paid work from anywhere else on certain different comedy gigs, comedy related, don't just say you work in Asda from time to time. That's not going to get you any more gigs anywhere. But say what spots you've had, please be honest in these situations, because a lot of promoters have been doing it for a long time, and they know when something doesn't smell right, and they'll be able to double check these things. And a lot of people know everybody in comedy, so they will know whether you have actually had these gigs or not, because it's very easily to find out. On top of that, if you've got some, use some press quotes, and if you don't have press quotes, there's no shame, again, is in asking a more reputable comedian that you have worked with, who has seen you, ask them for a quick quote. There's no shame in putting that on your CV if you can as well. And then on top of that, a quick video if you've got one. And if you haven't got one, go and make one. Go down to the Green Man now, get one recorded right now. Headshots are very important to put into your emails and to be accessible for promoters, because if they want to put you onto a post or a social media post, they need to have a headshot. Now, I understand it is quite difficult. It's a big expense to go out with straight away, but you don't have to go out and buy a brand new camera or have to go to a photo studio. You can get a relatively half-decent headshot just on your mobile phone. All of us have got really decent cameras on our mobile phone. Make sure the lighting's right, make sure it's nice and clear about your face. Just don't do one of those ones, you know, So your comedy bio is basically your sales pitch to punters. That's how it works. So the promoters will use your bio to sell tickets to punters to come to your gig. So it's basically your comedy CV, but in a more elaborate way of selling it. So you're not going to say, I did a 15-minute middle for so-and-so on this date over here. I did a 10-minute open source. We're not doing that. So you've gigs all over the country, in Sheffield, in Leicester, because that's all over the country. They're the two places that came to my head in this situation. So you're going to elaborate your comedy bio. You're going to add some quotes if you can, and if not, use some comedians' quotes. Don't just nick comedians' quotes. Ask comedians for quotes as well. So it's basically your sales pitch to the punters. Car shares are a fundamental way of starting out in comedy. Numerous times have I been driving with the whole bill in the car, driving up to Scotland or over to Dumfries. Dumfries is in Scotland. I don't know why I said Scotland or Dumfries. Anyway, driving all over the shop with a full load of comedians in the car. Now, there are a few things that you need to know about a car share. Is what happens in the car stays in the car. Not in a dirty way, just, you know, conversations. They stay in there about the gig. We don't go on. You understand. You understand. Second of all, please make sure that you do offer to pay for fuel, and your fuel share is whatever the driver says so. That's how it works. Okay, they've done all the work, they've done all the driving, they've sorted everything out, they're making sure you can get to the gig. So whatever they say the amount is, that's how much you pay, I'm afraid. That's how it works. When will I start to get paid for my comedy? Well, how long's a piece of string? It'll happen when it happens. There's no set time frame. There isn't 30 gigs in and then you get paid. That's not how it works. You'll get offered paid work when you're ready to be offered paid work. And that's down to whichever promoters individually. So one promoter may start paying you after 10 gigs. One promoter may not even consider looking at you until 100 gigs. It's just how it works. It's all down to you will get paid when you get paid, I'm afraid. So, what should I include on my invoice? It's dead simple. It's like any other invoice. You need to put your address, the promoter's information, so their name and their address on there, the invoice number, so it's traceable, your bank details, remember that, and the date. The date is so important, because if it gets further down the line and people don't pay, we'll get into that later, you know, we need to make sure when this date was, okay? So remember, your address, your promoter's information, what the gig was for, the invoice number and the date. They're the 5 important things you need to make sure is on an invoice. And actually, here's an invoice here. Have a look now. So you'll also notice on that invoice just there, it's got what it's for and how much it was for, and if tax was included, if you're lucky enough to have to pay a VAT tax as well, if it's on there. You know, it's all information. You'll also notice at the bottom of the invoice there is a SWIFT number and an IBAN number. That's if you were lucky enough to have money paid from abroad, you know, for cruises and stuff like that. I don't do cruises. I wouldn't want to. So, how long do I need to wait before I get paid? Now, that's simply between you and the promoter. Some gigs are cash in hand and you have to sign on the night. Some have to be invoiced. The standard invoice payment day is 28 days. Some take a little bit longer, but you're usually informed about that situation if you're working for councils, for example. Now, a lot of the time, promoters will pay and there's no problem whatsoever. Sometimes promoters forget, we're all human, and that's fine, just a quick nudge will fix that. However, if in the very, very rare occasion where they haven't paid their invoice, this is where you need to make sure you've got your date and your invoice number that you've chased up with. You can go to small claims court for just a small fee of just £50, which is usually does the trick, I'll be honest. Unfortunately, we have to include this situation, which is about safeguarding and your safety at gigs. Now, everybody has the right to feel safe and comfortable at all gigs. Now, if there's a situation that arises, whether that be with a fellow comic or a punter, first of all, your first point of call is the promoter. That's massively important. You need to let them know, particularly if it's a punter or another comic, because they need to know not to book them again. No, or not let them come to the comedy club. So your first point of call is the promoter. Second of all, you can go to getofflivecomedy.co.uk, which is an independent HR support website and network that's there for comedians, and they will give you the advice that you need. And then last resort, unfortunately, might have to be the police, but hopefully it won't have to go to that situation. Do I need an agent? When do I get an agent? The thing is, again, it's a bit like when do I get paid? You'll get one when you get one. It's how it works. Some people don't need an agent. Some people will get an agent when you start making enough money for them to think you're financially viable. You are a product to an agent. That's all you are. You're not a person. You are a product. That's how it works. They'll send you off. They'll make some money on you, and then then they might drop you. That's kind of how agencies work. Unfortunately, the majority of routes to television and greater things are through an agent. However, that's not the only way. You may not need an agent whatsoever. The truth of the matter is, if you're very early in the comedy world, you don't need an agent yet. You don't need to look at those sort of things. If you're that desperate and your heart is set on that situation, I wouldn't even consider approaching any agent until you've done a full run of the Fringe at least once. That's my personal opinion, if your heart is set on that. But I'll be honest with you, if you follow the steps that Felt and Out have given you, you don't need an agent. So, competitions and online content. There are plenty of comedians that have gone on after winning competitions like So You Think You're Funny, New Act of the Year, and gone on to great things, but there's also in equal measure, if not more so, just as many comedians that have done incredibly amazing things without winning a single competition as well. Look at me. I was just a semi-finalist to So You Think You're Funny. I would have been to the final, and I would have been to the semi-final, but anyway, it's a long story. I was working in Turkey. Let's not talk about these situations. Think about what competitions you want to enter, but if you don't win them or don't get to the final, don't progress, doesn't mean that your comedy career is over. Yes, they do look good on your comedy CV and that you got to certain levels of a comedy competition, but they aren't the be-all and end-all. It's a great way to be noticed, a great way to be seen, as well as your social media content. It's a great way to be seen, as you can be put and blanket out across the entire world. I had a video that had 200 million views worldwide. Does anybody recognise me? No, but it did grow my social media account to a substantial number, which is absolutely fantastic. So it is a great way to get your name out there. However, you've got to make sure your social media content is ready. That is a perfect blanket of the business side of comedy. Lovely.
All done, Cal.
Lovely bit of business.
And that's a wrap.